Leadership, mission, and breakthroughs. Welcome to Wondermous Podcast, a healthcare leadership journey. My name is Merikay Hunt, and I am founder of Coach MK Companies. We're a consulting firm that is dedicated to helping individuals create positive, purposeful change. We offer consulting, coaching, and professional development, and we've been doing this for over 25 years. And today I am super excited because we've got a great guest, and his name is Kenny Hancock. And this is our first episode. So let's go ahead and give him a big cheer. So Kenny, give our audience a little brushstroke of what inspired you to get into healthcare.
So, first of all, let me just say thank you, Mary Kay, for having me on here, and I'm honored to be your first guest. I got into healthcare really growing up in a family business and a buddy of mine, and I started in North Carolina and with with the Depew Corporation. It's now owned by Johnson and Johnson, and I was in the Piedmont region of North Carolina, so Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem, that whole area, and that's what got me into healthcare. And later on, I got into the surgical business, and I'll tell you how I got into that. We ended up in Nashville, and um, I've been blessed to, just kind of start in the sales side and then the distribution side, and then get involved in the surgery business.
Absolutely. And I think so. We do have the North Carolina connection because I was raised here and live here. And I think one of the things that inspired me a little bit about your background when we first connected was, your love of mentoring, developing colleagues, and really leading a team environment. And I was inspired by your entrepreneurship and, your business acumen. So if you had to share like someone that made a positive impact on your leadership journey, who would you say has done that for you, Kenny?
Other than my parents, and I grew up in a very entrepreneurial, environment, and I would say that was probably a football coach that had the biggest impact on me, and he coached me for 2 years, and I have been pretty much this size since I was in the seventh and eighth grade, and so everybody caught me over the years, but that football coach moved on, and he didn't win a game his after he moved on, and then he went to Florida and he won a couple of state championships and ended up with Bobby Bowden down at Florida State,
Oh, wow.
and stayed with Bobby for his entire career, and he was the assistant head coach the last, I think, 4 years of his career. And I ran into Coach. His name was Jim Gladden. And I ran into Coach Gladden, I don't know, 15 years ago, I guess, on an airplane. And he knew me immediately. And
Wow.
I was pretty impressed by that. And he had some big time players that were All Americans in college. And then he also had some pro players that were in the Hall of Fame. So I think Jim had a very significant impact on my career.
It's interesting because I grew up playing soccer, and one of my soccer coaches for the Recreation League in Greensboro was also my referee in high school. And, you remember those moments of dialogue when they pushed you to go to that next level, or they helped see something inside of you that maybe you didn't even see inside yourself. So certainly coaching can be an opportunity for us to step up, right, and go to that next
Yeah.
level. And in your career, establishing these companies, the physician-owned surgical facilities, operation management, what do you think has been one of your biggest accomplishments that you are most proud of?
I would say starting Ortholink Physicians Corporation. That was one of the first companies that we started, and I left Depew to start that company. And an
Mhm.
orthopedic surgeon approached me one day. He was a buddy of mine, and he said, Hancock, we touch a lot of things that we don't own. And I was like, well, give me that list. And, surgery was at the top of that list. And followed by, imaging, led by MRI and physical therapy and real estate partnerships and DME and all kinds of things. And so I developed a business plan because he was busy being an orthopedic surgeon. And and it was a very successful company. And we started that in '96. You know, we had 225 orthopedic surgeon partners, and we
Hmm.
were the first physician practice management group in the United States.
Right.
You know, and so I would say that that is, you know, my first was really the pinnacle of my career, I think.
Oh, that's awesome. And you made me think of my father when you just mentioned that story because he was a periodontist
Hmm.
and he was an excellent clinician, but not so good at the business part. He grew up in a farm in West Virginia. His parents were both school teachers. And so he realized pretty quickly, I need to have like the dream team helping me out. So he got a great financial planner. He got a great healthcare consultant. He had an attorney that helped guide him. And I think that's one of the blessings that you've helped physicians do is let them focus on delivery of health care, and then you can help run the business because that can reduce their stress. It helps them have more work-life balance, if you will, so they're not stressing out about the financial aspects of it. So what do you think has been another blessing of your business acumen in supporting the realm of healthcare?
I think that, and this would hold true in any company, I think that is born that's entrepreneurial. I think you've got to be transparent. You know,
Mm,
you've got to tell the truth all the time.
yeah.
You need really good
Even
people
when it
around.
hurts, right?
Right. You need really good people around you. And you realize that you don't have to do everything, right?
Yeah.
And finance and operations and technology, I mean, it's all very different from starting a company, having the vision of where that company could go.
Mm-hmm.
You don't always have to agree.
Right.
The one thing that I have found over my career is that development is very different from operations, right?
Mm,
And operations and finance kind of go hand in hand, and the technology side is important because that's how you keep track of what you're doing, right?
right,
And
right.
and I think that's really important. You know, I would say that in everything that we've done over the years, we've been very disciplined about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you certainly cannot be afraid when you're starting your own enterprise. And I think you got to have some fun along the way. I mean,
Wow.
if you're not having fun, you're not. It's not all about the money, and it's about having some fun along the way.
That's great. And, when you think about it, we spend more time regularly at work than we do sometimes with our own family. So surrounding yourself with clients that you enjoy being with, that make that positive impact. And, years ago, I was doing it was a retreat for large physician groups. They were general practitioners, and it was interesting because they had 5 locations. And this is where the transparency part really came in. The first day, the business consultant did part of the financial piece. Then I did some leadership and team. And then the next day, we had a heart talk. And this was a strategy I learned from Jack Canfield in his book, Success Principles. And I passed a book around to each physician and I let them share what was on their heart. And if they wanted to pass, they had up to 2 minutes, they could pass. But the second round, they had to share. And what bubbled up from those transparent sharings, if you will, is they had had some long-term fractures that they had never discussed. So some long-term conflict that they had to really have an open, honest conversation about. And ultimately, one of the practices ended up tearing off and creating their own entity, but it made it stronger. So what do you think has been one of your biggest challenges in your career that you feel like it was a huge obstacle, but you successfully overcame it?
I think just dealing with physicians in general is an obstacle because, your dad was a dentist. You understand that. What I'm saying, I'm not being derogatory in any fashion, but they're very bright individuals, and they have to
Mhm.
trust you.
Yes.
And if they and you can't earn that trust in the first meeting. I mean, it takes several meetings to be able to earn that trust, and I
Right.
think that I always go back to, and I'm on the board of a little company, and the CEO of that says, we're in the business of meeting an unmet need. We're in the
Mm,
business of solving a problem,
mm,
and I think that if you approach any type of sales environment from that perspective, if you're
right.
solving a problem, then you're going to be successful, and you're going to have people that are going to trust you. And they'll
Absolutely.
trust you through your actions and not what you're saying. You're right. They'll trust you through your actions. And that's held true for me no matter what I've done,
Sure.
over the years, DePuy or OrthoLink or the other companies that we have started.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have had a lot of, I say a lot. I have had several physicians come back to me, and this is in the third or fourth company that we've started, and they've
Right.
said, "Hey, man, you didn't get our deal the first time, the first go round, but you're going to get this one."
Right.
And so that tells me that relationships matter,
Yes.
that truthfulness matters, and I would say that if anybody does that, they're going to be successful.
Right. And, there's an old saying, you do business with people you like, trust, and respect. And
Yep.
building relationships does build business. And building relationships can also impact the patient experience. So, when years ago, before I took a position as director of patient and family experience at a hospital, I found two books by Erie Chapman called Radical Loving Care and Sacred Work. And it was about sort of creating this sense of real person centered care in the hospital system. And you shared a powerful book with me during our call, the Coming Healthcare Revolution. Can you tell me a little bit more about that book and some challenges that are presented?
Yeah, and I'm not a big reader. I read books when I have to. Thank God that you can now listen to them, right? And so I listen to them when I go on a walk. But this one kind of struck me, and from the perspective of, if you look at our healthcare dollar, the last 15 years, it's grown from 2.5 trillion to 4.9 trillion.
Right.
And they state that in their book right at the beginning, and they just said, as a percentage of the GDP, it's just not sustainable. And
Right.
if there's no changes that are made to healthcare, this is going to rise to 7.2, over $7 trillion by, I think it was 2032.
Wow.
And that's pretty darn significant. So,
Sure.
you know, Don Clifton, who bought the Gallup Corporation, he's passed away
Hmm.
now, but he was
Hmm.
an early influence on my life, and he was a psychologist. And Don said, he goes, "I want to study what is right with people." And
Yes.
he had bought the Gallup Corporation. And so I've stayed in contact with the Gallup Corporation over the years. And I think his grandson runs that company today.
Hmm.
But, Gallup says that 60% of Americans think that the healthcare system is a hassle, right? And that it's very stressful for them to participate in. And so
Right.
this book was, it kind of hit me, in the face, the coming revolution of healthcare, because I see it. And they identified, the I wasn't familiar with the author. Davis Johnson and Paul Caruso are the authors of that book, but they
Right.
talk about forces that are out there, and I see that as it relates to market forces, and this is becoming a very pro-consumer business, and a lot of that is
Hmm.
driven by self-insured employers.
Hmm.
If you think about it, 178 million people, over 60% of the workforce gets their health care through self-insured employers. Well, the way that works is they look at a large company and a small company. And if you've got greater than 50 employees, you're a large company. If you're below 50, you're a small
Hmm.
company, right? And what struck me about that is that, the healthcare cost now for a family of four is about $25,000.
Wow.
Well, the employers are passing that along to, the employee. And so that individual is paying about 30% of that tab. And that doesn't include the deductible, which is another $7,000. So they've got
Sure.
about
Or
$13,000
10, depending on the
of their,
plan.
you know, and so
Exactly.
the market forces in the consumer really didn't care, used not to care, because a third party was paying for whatever care that they were getting. But now they
Right.
have a stake in their care. And I think
Right.
that that is going to create a market shift. where you've got to do things a little bit differently. You got to look at and we hear a lot about whole health type of
Hmm.
mechanisms where they're looking at the entire episode that an individual might have over his lifetime.
Right.
And so prevention and wellness is a big part of it, and chronic diseases are kind of rampant. And so I think that you know, in that book, I really believe that market forces, and we're seeing care redesign in terms of healthcare systems are now creating ambulatory strategies. They're going out to where the patients are,
Yes,
rather
yes.
than making the patients come to them and have to go into a 10-story parking garage and they can't find anything. And, so they're going out to the patients now. And so that book just resonates with me because I think they're dead on, and they give a lot of statistics in the beginning of it, but then they talk about things that I'm seeing, and the care migration. We've touched on that just a little bit. The hospital systems are they're now going out to where the patients are, and there's been a lot of consolidation, as in that industry. You've got some 8, 10, 12 billion-dollar organizations that are out there, and they're now doing that. And so and I think they talk a little bit about care aggregation, and I think we're seeing that. I see that over in my sector in the
Hmm.
outpatient surgery side. And
Right.
Tenet, which is a big hospital company, they now own USPI. It's been reported that Ascension had made an offer for AmSurge, which is $3.9 billion offer.
Wow.
And AmSurge is one of the largest players in the surgery center business. So I think healthcare systems, by and large, will end up owning that portion of the outpatient care. So
Right.
uh, I would encourage anybody that is in healthcare to read that book or to
Hmm.
listen to that book because I think it's fairly long and it's arduous to get through, but it's worth it, because of the statistical data that is in there. Uh,
Sure.
it's kind of boring, and then the things that resonate with me are the things that I'm seeing.
Well, and change is the one thing constant in our world, and we have got to make some tremendous changes on the health insurance side, on the care side, on the patient experience side. And when I was working at the hospital, we got rid of our mental health facility. And I'm thinking, where are these people going to go?
Yeah.
And, just being able to provide the right services, but also having the mechanisms in place to somehow manage the rising costs because it's just astronomical. And we think about big purposeful change. So, one of the questions that came on my heart this week is if you could talk to your younger self and give yourself some wisdom or guidance in your leadership journey, what would you say?
I would say do not be afraid to take the reins. And I think I learned early on that you don't have to do everything, but you have to
Mm,
surround your people with people that can and that are very efficient at what they deliver. And I think I was the right person to lead the companies, but true to that, statement, and having the right seat on the bus. I've always been a developer at heart, and so we would hire CEOs to run the company. I'm running this last one, and I wouldn't be afraid of that. But what you need to do is surround yourself with the right people, and
absolutely.
don't be afraid of difference of opinion because that's going to exist in any good organization.
Absolutely. And that it reminds me of one of my favorite Dale Carnegie principles from How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could possibly happen? It's like once you answer that question, you can keep leaning in and feel the fear and do it anyway. Well, Kenny, this has
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely been a pleasure. I'm grateful that we could invest this time just to discuss your journey, your mission, and some of your breakthroughs. So, blessings to you, and make every day count in your leadership journey.
Mary Kay, thank you very much for including me. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully this helps somebody that is a lot younger than I am.
Absolutely. Pass on the wealth of knowledge, right?
That's right. All
Thank
right.
you. Blessings. Take care.